All right, so today on the podcast, I have Dr. Daniel Ward. He is a plastic surgeon and the founder of the Ward Institute in Salt Lake City, Utah. His practice focuses on inner and outer beauty. Thank you so much for joining us.
I am so thrilled to be here.
Yay!
It's so great to be sitting by the legend.
The legend.
And being here to talk about something I'm passionate about.
Totally, 100%. We're both resilience fanatics and mindset people, so there we go. What inspired you to get into plastic surgery in the beginning, and how has your vision evolved of Ward Institute?
My real interest in the face came about as a medical student.
Okay. Not until medical school, like not when you were young.
I mean, I kind of wanted to be a physician. I mean, I had that kind of in the background, but it was really like we were taking, as a medical student, they were taking out, this is kind of gross, so don't get grossed out, everybody, but they were taking out a tumor from a patient's tongue.
Okay.
And if you think about, like, how do you get something out of a tongue?
Yeah.
So you can take it out through the mouth,
Uh-huh.
or you can actually go through the throat, which is kind of gross. Or if it's too big, you have to actually do this thing where you open it up here, split the jaw open, and go in and take it out that way. And I'm kind of like, I kind of liked surgery. It was really interesting, like you see this anatomy or whatever, but I was kind of getting sickened by what we were doing.
Okay.
Because we were taking this poor person's face apart, and I was like, they don't even look like a human anymore.
Right.
So it's kind of grossing me out. Well, lo and behold, they get the tumor out. They take they do the neck dissection, getting all the lymph nodes out, and they put it back together, and it's a person again.
Yeah.
And it made me realize, like, in that set, like, our face is so much of our identity.
Yeah.
And so that really was like the first strong spark, and where the flames really started taking off. And then I went and did my training at a place that I know is near and dear to you, because you're from the great state of Michigan.
I know. Michigan, friends, Michigan. That's why he's really on the podcast, just to let you know.
So I did my residency and fellowship there, and then came back, was at the University of Utah, and then went out into private practice. But as I've gone through, so now my practice, I don't take care of cancer really, but I do take care of, like noses or eyelids, or, the face, if the face is drooping, or there's a double chin here. And it's still the same thing. It's like, actually, like, how can we get back to restoring their identity? And to me, like, restoring the identity is actually the most important thing that we do. I feel like what we're doing with plastic surgery, especially of the face, is almost like a sacred sort of thing, where we're trying to bring out, like, their true spirit, like who they are. And if they look in the mirror and they see, like, big saggy jowls or wrinkles, and I know that might seem superficial to some people, but that's not who they see of themselves. So it's like getting them back to their identity.
Yeah, like looking in the mirror and being excited. Like, this is me, I'm hot. Like, let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and think about, like, what it's like if if you're wearing, like, your some shorts and a t-shirt that's got holes in it and stuff like that, and you walk out of some fancy hotel, you feel a little self-conscious or whatever, versus how you feel if you just went and spent, I don't know, $10,000 on new clothes, and you go, you pull into this fancy car or whatever, like, you totally feel different. You carry yourself differently. Yeah. And that's kind of what it's like here. If I've got kind of these things that when I look in the mirror don't fit with what my identity is, that bothers me. One of the most incredible stories that was related by a plastic surgeon in Maxwell Maltz in his book, Psycho-Cybernetics, talked about two patients with a scar on their cheek. One patient was a salesman, and he could not function in life because he had this scar on his cheek. Oh, wow. He couldn't stop thinking about it. It's like, I'm not making a sale. I can't get this in life, He had all these examples of why his life's a failure because of the scar. I just need you to fix this. If I don't get this fixed, I can't function in life. Compare that to another guy, similar sort of scar. But this guy got his scar from a fencing sword.
Oh, yeah.
He was a fencer in college or whatever, and he got this scar. It was like a mark of pride for him.
Right.
So to him, that was like, though, this makes me like part of my identity. So that's kind of the same sort of thing. Like the same scar, kind of same sort of aged person. What changes? Well, it's how we view that. And it's so much about our mind and the story that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, that story is so amazing, and the difference it makes, and whether you're going to be positive or negative, or how you see it, or how it benefits you.
I think the other thing that's super interesting is that there's like that conscious part of us that's like our identity. Like, my identity is that I don't have these jowls, and I'm purposely kind of picking things that are maybe a little bit odd, or maybe out there, or like big ears.
The ears that some people have that stick out.
Like, I feel. For better or for worse, like, people associate that with, like, not being very intelligent. That's obviously not true.
Interesting.
But they think that. Or sometimes, like, somebody with, like, a big bump on their nose, they think, like, oh, it makes me look mean.
Okay.
Like, okay, well, maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but it's how you view that.
How you view it.
Right. And I think the really fascinating thing from like a psychological standpoint is the deeper part of our brain doesn't know the difference between what's real versus what we tell ourselves.
Right.
And how that affects, whatever we want to do as far removed from how we look as possible. But it still makes a difference.
Totally. Now, when people get surgery, you see all these TikToks and Instagrams and everything nowadays. Like, is it a way that it ages, or does certain parts of your face age faster than other parts of your face? So you're always going to be picking up pieces.
The face kind of ages at the same pace in the sense of, like the same biological factors are there throughout. But we typically tend to notice things like in certain areas a little bit more quickly. So, for example, our eyes, we often notice that first. Okay. It also doesn't hurt, like biologically, just the way that our anatomy is structured is that we've got this very thin skin here. Okay. And right underneath that skin is the muscle. These muscles contract. And that's really how we get wrinkles formed, of course, is that, it's like that constant, if you think about like a piece of paper, if I fold a piece of paper over and over and over again, I eventually get a crease. Yeah. Same thing with like the wrinkles of my eyes. Like eventually I'm going to get a crease. So the eyes will usually start first. Okay. Then maybe like the cheeks start to descend, the gravity does its thing. There's also changes in kind of like the way that the fat in our face is distributed. So that's kind of the next thing.
Can you share a defining moment in your career when you realized you're making a significant impact on people's lives?
Well, there's several. The first thing that comes to mind, though, is I saw a patient maybe like 4 months after her rhinoplasty. So did a nose job on her, just took the bump down, made her nose smaller. And it looked good. But she was, there's some noses you're like, wow, that looks so good. Okay. There's others you're like, okay, that looks better, but nothing. So I came in to see her at 4 months. And she looked just on fire. Like her whole soul was like on fire. Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, like you look incredible. Yeah. And she's like, oh, thanks. It's, she's very polite. She's like, thanks. It's my, my nose. I'm like, no. Like, this is not your nose. Like, this is something else. Like, what's going on? She's like, well, like my nose, like I did my nose. And then I was like, you know what? This kind of feels good. Like I took care of myself with this finally. And I decided, like, it's not too bad to go to the gym. So I started going to the gym more regularly. I started eating a little bit more. And then, like I started to, like, I just kind of reinvested in my relationship with my husband. And it was like, it's such a small thing, right? Like getting your nose in, who cares? Like, it's just how you look. Nobody cares how you look. Right. Except for she cares how she looks. Yeah. And so, that's when I really clicked on me. And she taught me, like, so much in medicine. Like, we always learn from our patients is... She taught me that doing a little something on the outside
can
helps
do a ton on the inside.
Yes, and not like in a weird, vain way, like I think like the layperson sometimes thinks. It's more like in this case, like she's a mom. She's been taking care of people her whole adult life. It's like the first time she's had a chance to invest in herself.
That's amazing.
And how good that feels. Yeah. And that's really changed a lot of kind of how I approach things and how we do it. Like this is not about like getting, some vain change.
No, I'll tell you, like talking from personal experience. So I was in my young 20s when I got breast implants. And before I had them, I just felt like so masculine. I was an athlete. I was flat chested. I was super athletic and my body just felt boxy. So I always wear full piece swimsuits or I just was embarrassed to go to the pool, blah, 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 blah. I got implants. It opened this entire door to embracing my femininity. And I was like, yeah. Honest to God, it was the best gift I gave myself. And then I looked back at my photos of me before and I could recall like the stories that I wrote and the things I told myself. And I'm like, I am so grateful I did this. If I had to take them out someday, I now know the difference. Sure. And I looked back at those photos and I felt so bad for that girl that didn't appreciate her body or her skills or her style and just like fully embraced having implants. And it was the best gift I ever gave myself. Yeah. Yeah. So
what was the change like? Like what kind of clicked in your mind, do you think?
Well, it just like when I was in a swimsuit, I'm like, I look like a female. Yeah. And so now I can like walk like a female and I'll wear high heels and I'll have long hair. And like, it was just so weird because I felt I looked like Shrek before, if I had to be honest. Then I would like, you just kind of like replicated that idea.
Yeah.
Right? Like I would wear shorts that were too baggy. I would wear t-shirts that were too big. I would do everything that just kind of like hid who I was.
Right.
And when I had the implants, it's like, okay, I look like a female. Like I'm going to live this up and embrace it. And I just opened up a side of me that I knew existed, but didn't know how to reach another way.
If you think about that, like it's such a change in the story that you're telling yourself.
Yes.
And, you know, Tony Robbins talks about this. My coach is a former Tony Robbins coach.
Okay.
He changed it from, Tony Robbins talks about the 3 S's.
Okay.
My coach, Trevor McGregor, talks about the 4 S's. But the three S's are your state, your story, your strategy, and then Trevor added the 4th one in your standards. You know, like if we have a problem to solve, like weight loss is a great example for this. I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay, well, everybody in the world knows the strategy for that. Mm-hmm. You eat less than you burn, right? Like that is the strategy. Simple as that. Then why don't we do it?
Right.
Well, it's because those other S's that are so important, which is your story. You know, like you were just talking about your story, like I didn't feel feminine. Yeah. Which I mean, looking at you, like, I mean, it's almost inconceivable for me or anybody else to really even understand that, which you get.
Right.
But that's the story you were telling yourself. But then even more important than that is like our state, which is like our emotional state. Like what on a moment-to-moment basis is your state?
How do you stay, I mean, you have this private practice that you've built into this successful business. How do you stay on top of trends and things going on in the industry when you have your own standalone shop? Because, you know, like when you're in a group practice, you have different people that are sharing ideas and things like that. So how are you expanding what you're exposed to?
Just kind of philosophically, I'm actually kind of a late responder in the sense of like, if there's a new technology or whatever, I'm not one that typically goes
jumps on the bandwagon.
Crazy. I don't know. I get a little nervous about, you know, like what effects are this going to have? Like, let's let these other people figure out the new technology or the new science or whatever. Having said that, though, I think there's some certain problems that you can see that problem and you say like, oh, this is a solution to that problem and take care of it. But a lot of the technology in medicine is like, this is a technology in search of a problem to solve. You know, like, okay, we got this laser. I mean, we use lasers all the time now, but like lasers are just kind of a funny example because like it's a laser, you know, like lasers are cool, right?
Right.
Like we got this laser, what can we use it for? Some people use lasers for eyelid surgery to make the incisions. The results aren't any better.
Okay.
Like the outcomes aren't any better. In fact, you could maybe argue they're worse because it maybe takes a little bit longer to do. Sometimes it's like the old things are still the right things. You know? Like gravity happens. We want to kind of address that. We know that volume changes in the face. We want to address that. So there's a clear technology. Oh, this is going to help with the volume in the face. Like it makes sense to do that. Now, having said that, there's been, over the last 4 to 5 years, there's been a real transition in terms of how we treat certain areas of the face.
Okay.
So for example, like for years, decades, we haven't really known what to do with like a double chin. You know, you think about it, like we all have friends or whatever who they're young. They maybe aren't overweight, but we always associate it. If you have extra fullness here, it's like, oh, it's a double chin. I must be overweight.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, we look down on people who have that, even though it's just a genetic thing. Well, there's been kind of a change in the technique. Like when I was training, like you would never touch the muscles here, would never touch the fat here, the deeper muscles, the deeper fat. Now I do that all the time. I do that like 3 or 4 times a week where I'm taking out this deep fat in the neck and I'm tightening these muscles and getting these nice, beautiful, tight jaw lines. For like young people who are like, well, you know, we used to say like, well, sorry, you just have like, just your anatomy is such that we can't do that. So that's an example of maybe some technology that's just changing in terms of not new technology like a laser, but changing in terms of like the treatments that we do or how we do it.
How do you manage the responsibilities of not only being at the top of your field as a surgeon, but running a business?
There's a few business principles that you have to keep in mind. I love the book by Michael Gerber, The E-Myth Revisited. And he talks about how if you're the operator of the business, you can't really be the owner because you're always working in the business. If you're the technician, you're always doing the technical stuff and you can't think about the business. And that's hard. Like it's really hard to stay up on top of like, well, how's the business doing as a whole? How are we keeping this healthy? And I've gone down paths where the business hasn't been healthy at times because of me doing other things that when I needed to be paying attention to the business. So I think kind of trying to find that balance, like so much in life, it's about finding balance between where you're actually doing the technical elements versus the business. I mean, it's no different than like a baker, you know, like how does a baker go from, you know, they like make the best pies in the world and everybody tells them like, you should start a bakery. So they start a bakery. Now all of a sudden they're trying to make the pies and do the P&L statements at the end of the month or whatever, and
Right.
none of them are going well. So you need to kind of figure out how to do that. But then also I think the concept of, Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan wrote this amazing book called Who, Not How.
Yes.
Don't you love that book?
That book has like changed so much of my life.
Yes.
You have no idea.
Such a great book.
Yes.
But find who.
Yeah.
Like hire the bookkeeper.
Yes.
You pay them whatever, $700 a month.
Right.
They take care of that. You make the pies.
Right.
And it just makes a lot better. So some of that is for me, but then I've done other things where I've like overextended myself. Like I went from a point where I had like 48 employees and I was like way overpaying.
Yeah.
Like payroll was through the roof, causing me all this stress.
Right.
I was having to to use the pie analogy, make like 10,000 pies a month when really I can only do like 1,000.
Right.
And then that's not healthy either. Mm-hmm. I guess the other thing that I feel is important for any sort of business, and this is, Dave Ramsey, like the personal finance guy, I heard him say this once, that there's only two things that matter in a business, and they both start with P, profit and people. And if you start making decisions that harm your ability to be profitable or harm the people, either your customers or
your
employees, your team, your business is going to have a hard time. So just keep those two P's in mind. And actually just this morning, I was driving and my manager sent me a couple messages about some things related to the business. And it was crazy. We ended up just like on this phone call making a decision that was kind of a tough decision to make. It involved kind of letting somebody go and making that decision like, this is what we need to do because that's what's going to make the business most profitable. And then like on the back end, like before I'd finished the drive, we had two people that were going to kind of fill that role. Mm-hmm. So I'm just surprised by how often when you make the decision.
Like it fills in, right? Like things come together. Totally.
But you have to, and again.
You have to have the courage to make the decision and it's not always fun.
That's so hard.
It is so hard. I always feel so much more responsible than I should. And I'm like, okay, boundaries. This is the position. This is the requirements. You're not meeting them or it's not lining up. So, but to take the human element out of it to run the business sometimes is really hard, especially when you're in such a human impact business.
Well, I think as a physician, that kind of goes against my personality. I mean, because whenever I've had to let someone go, and I sometimes like hang on to them too long, or I don't give the proper feedback that they deserve to have. Yeah. Because we all need to know like how we're doing, in a job. But I feel that so often I've had problems or got myself into trouble where I haven't treated people the way they deserve to be treated because I've been afraid to give them feedback.
That's such a thing.
Or I give up on them. And I feel like, wait, I've given up on them. Like, I'm a physician. I'm supposed to heal them. Like, I need to give them better training or I need to take care. They just didn't get enough love. They need a hug, whatever it might be. Yeah. When it's really like, no, I actually they just need some feedback. I mean, I don't know. I love Layla Hormozi and her comments about how to give feedback and how often we need to give feedback. It's so much more than we realize. And I've realized like, I'm so bad at that.
Yeah. And it's a muscle. Like once you get used to it and like the system gets established, like here's what's normal, everything improves, but it's getting into that new program and that new system and getting everything up and running.
Well, I think to take it kind of into a much more kind of intimate level with like even with like relationships, like I've realized that so many of the difficulties I've had in relationships are from times when, again, we don't think about like giving feedback to a spouse, right?
Right.
But on the other hand, like we actually really need to. One of my favorite authors is David Burns. He's a psychiatrist. And he talks about the 5 secrets of effective communication that all center around empathy, assertiveness, and respectfulness. Where if you aren't being assertive, you're actually missing out on a key element of communication. I know, same thing with employees, same thing with like relationships. If you're not giving people that feedback or telling them what you really think. Number one, you're robbing them. Like they deserve to know what you really think. But also if you kind of hold that inside, you're going to develop some resentment.
No, and you're not getting yourself satisfied. So then everything starts to deteriorate.
So like, it's really important actually that we kind of have that. And it's surprising to me how often it comes back to these very basic skills of
all of it, right? All of it is like simple. If it's executed, you're fine. I'm so bad at it.
And I need to learn.
Oh, it's all of us. Okay, so if you could go back to your younger self, knowing where you are right now, what would you tell your younger self?
I think the first thing would be that, like, don't sweat the small stuff. Yeah. It'll all work out. Yeah. Like that saying, I can't remember who said it. It'll all be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end.
There you go.
So it's kind of like, it'll be fine. Just like hang in there. The second thing I think would be like take care of yourself, both physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, like be there for you. Because if you're not going to be there for you, you can't be there for, your spouse, your loved ones, your children, whatever, your employees. And I think, it's kind of like, I think those will be the things I'd say. It's like, take care of yourself. It'll be okay.
Okay. So if somebody is entering a high stakes career, there's a lot of them out there. What is something advice that you'd give them based on your experiences?
Take care of yourself first, make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And then number two, as much as you might think by going to this high stakes career that you can avoid some of those soft skills, focus on the soft skills, focus on communication, speaking, writing, learn those skills because they're going to be invaluable. All the other stuff will come. If you need to learn the chemistry, the law, whatever detailed thing that you need to, like all that technical stuff, that's the easy part. The hard part is those soft skills, like how to work with people, how to talk to them, how to communicate, how to work in groups.
Yeah.
Reminds me there's
group projects. I have nightmares about group projects still. I'm like, I'll just do the whole thing. Okay, never mind. We're not a group.
So it reminds me there's a couple things that talk about like the importance of working in groups and why that is so valuable. One of them was a study done, I think it's an economist from the University of Chicago, that is like something like he found out about the GED programs, like the alternative high school diploma thing. He's like, why are we going to 4 years of high school? Like, what a terrible economic idea. If they can do this in 3 months or whatever the time is, we can do something in 3 months instead of 4 years. Like, let's do the 3 month thing and then let's get them out into the workforce, like economist sort of thinking, right?
Yeah, of course.
And so he started down this path during his career of like looking at how people do, like people who have a GED versus people who have a high school diploma. And of course, there's like a whole bunch of other things, but if you try to control those the best you can, what you find out is that almost without exception, the group with a high school diploma does so much better in their life than the group with a GED.
Wow.
And that's even controlling, for maybe like some bad social things or whatever.
Yeah.
And they say that the reason is exactly what you said. Like it's those things like small group projects. It's learning how to communicate with each other, relying on whatever, the annoying person in your group that's holding you back.
Right, and learning how to interact with them.
Yes.
When my kids were little, I homeschooled them because I hired a teacher and we did all the education and they were off the charts, right? Smart, because they had all that one-on-one attention and they didn't have anything else going on.
Yeah.
And then I realized when I put them into other settings, like the emotional IQ was just far behind and you can't rush that. That's something that takes experience doing. So I actually put them into schools and made them do all the group projects and slow down and have the experience of, okay, if you're doing better, how do you help other people? And those are skills that you need for life. Just because you're at the top, no one wants to be at the top of the mountain by themselves. Right? And so learning how to do all those pieces along the way, it was just one of those aha moments. And a friend of mine positioned it to me and said, okay, where'd you go to school? How much are you making? Guess what? I went to this school and it was, Harvard or Yale or one of those fancy ones. And I'm not at that level. And so it doesn't matter how smart you are.
Totally.
And it was one of those things when all of a sudden I allowed the smart card to not matter and the people card matter.
Yeah.
Game changed on everything.
That's so cool that you realized that with your kids, though.
Yeah, well, thank God before they got out of my house. I don't know. The oldest one we still might have messed up too long on, but we'll see.
Oh, boy.
It happens. So how do you prioritize your mental health and well-being?
So taking little steps.
Yep.
I don't start my day before 9 a.m. typically.
Oh, good for you.
In terms of my work day.
Yeah.
Like I don't see a patient before 9 a.m. Later if I can. Like OR starts at 9. It doesn't start. Most of the time it starts at like 7:30 for most surgeons. For me, that extra hour and a half is all about time outside, time like walking the dog, working out, doing kind of like my mental, emotional prep. And it's really made a huge difference in how I am, how I show up for myself, how I show up for others. Whereas before I was, I kind of thought this is how I am. Like, I'm just kind of a little irritable in the morning. Or I'm just a little bit, like just difficult. That's like how surgeons are,
yeah, totally.
And I was like, I don't need to do that. Like I can make some changes that are pretty darn simple, like starting the day off an hour and a half later. And I got a little pushback, like the anesthesiologist, like, wait, I want to get home a little earlier. I was like, well, sorry. Like,
This is
Do it
my
on the front
zone of
end.
genius. This is when I operate my best. What's
Yes.
your nighttime routine look like? Do you have one of those too?
Not as strong as
Not
the
as
morning.
strong.
For me, like
Okay.
it really is about morning. But typically, it's amazing. Like if I get the morning stuff in, it's like the nighttime just kind of goes to this slow taper down,
Okay.
and it's kind of relaxing. I do try to do like a little bit of gratitude. I think this is a little bit hokey maybe to some people, but I think that if I go to sleep with like gratitude, with positive thoughts, it's like it carries
Well,
with me throughout the
are
night.
taught to do prayers, okay? Because it allows us to
Seriously.
be grateful for things, and we put that into our little psyche,
Right.
and then we go to bed with it and bake it.
I think it makes such a difference in terms of how you process things. And I think that, there's something magical that we don't even, have a clue how to comprehend, I think, at this point. But while we sleep, there's something magical that happens in terms of like how our brain processes memories, how it kind of goes through things. And I think it does make a difference.
I like it. I like it. I like it. What's one message you wish society embraced about the connection between appearance and emotional well-being?
That it matters.
It does.
I think a lot of the general public thinks that it's like the people who get plastic surgery are like whatever, Beverly Hills housewives sitting on their yacht drinking champagne all day, or whatever. I don't know.
Whatever their story is.
Whatever
It's
the
a
story
story,
is,
right?
And that's just not it. It's like people, just everyday people who want to look a little bit better, and more importantly, feel a little bit better, and be able to kind of take on life. They just kind of want to do that, and not to be kind of flippant with it or whatever, but it's kind of like, well, there's a reason that you don't style the hair you did in whatever 1998. You changed your hair. Now, obviously, having surgery is different than changing your hair.
No, but it's-
or the clothing. It's the same sort of thing. It's about confidence, about how you feel about yourself. You'd feel pretty funny if you showed up to some big event with 1998 hair.
Yeah, maybe not me, but yeah. No, I'm still trying to rock the 80s. Come on. It was a great decade. Let's not get rid of it. Okay, so what do you see, or how do you see facial plastic surgery intersecting overall wellness and mental health?
Well, I feel like facial plastic surgery is really about how you feel on the inside. And I think, with wellness, like in terms of like, weight, hormones and stuff like that, those are all so closely tied to how we feel.
Right.
Think about how you feel like after you've like spent all day eating candy on Christmas
I know.
versus how you feel like after you had like a hard workout or whatever. Like there's a different feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they both feel good.
They both feel
But
good,
one
but one
feels
feels
a
good
little
longer.
different. Yes,
Okay? Like
right.
one feels good longer. I will give you that.
So I think there really is a close association between wellness and overall health and our appearance. And I think that we're kind of realizing that. I think we've moved away from thinking like, oh, this is just about vanity.
Right.
No, this is like actually it's like taking care of you. And I mean, the example you gave about breast augmentation feeling more feminine.
Yeah.
Example I talked about with like somebody getting their nose done or their jowls taken care of with a facelift to make them feel a little bit more like themselves.
Yeah.
Is all related to that. Like I don't think any of us really, I'm 18 and when I'm 52, I really, really want to feel like crap.
Yeah. Said no
Like
one ever.
nobody wants that. Like you expect, you really want to feel well, but we don't know how to do that. So I think taking those steps to invest in yourself, I think that's the trend, is that more and more of us are realizing that's so important and it's all integrated together.
Yeah. Well, and you are doing this because you're putting together a retreat in February.
Yes.
That is about the inner beauty. So talk to us a little bit about this because I'm super excited about it because I'm going.
I'm so excited for you to be there.
I'm so excited.
So, I suspect most people are familiar with the mastermind concept. I think if I remember the history correctly, it was like a J.P. Morgan or Rockefeller sort of idea where, like the old guys in the back room smoking were like the first mastermind groups, And the concept is, that whole saying that, if you're around the 5 people you spend the most time with, you'll be the 6. If you're around five millionaires, you'll be the 6th. If you're around 5 crack addicts, you'll be the 6th. So it's who we spend the time with is who we end up being like. So, the concept of a mastermind group is getting with a group of people where we can invest in ourselves and invest in the development of people around us so that we can kind of level up our game. And then on top of that, it's, helping teach some principles. So it's really kind of it's a 5-day event. It's on the Big Island of Hawaii, which I think is like, for me, like the body-mind connection is so strong. And what better place than Hawaii where, it's safe. People don't have to worry about like safety. I think that sometimes turns people away. But you can also challenge yourself a little bit, whether it's like going diving, going snorkeling, whether it's jumping off a cliff or hiking a waterfall. There's a little bit of challenge. And I believe that kind of feeds our brain to be at our best. So every morning we do something physically where maybe it's just like meditating on the beach together or doing some sort of event like that or hiking a waterfall, whatever. In the afternoon, it's small group sessions where we talk about certain concepts. So day one is all about mindset. So, how can we train our mind to be at its very best? Day two is about communication. How can we communicate both with ourselves? How can we communicate with intimate partners, with family members, with coworkers, with colleagues, with partners in a way that's going to be effective? Where we can do that, with empathy, assertiveness, respect, teaching kind of some techniques that are simple but pretty high level effective. Day three is about health and wellness. Like how can we incorporate some of the things we're talking about to be healthier, to be better? Something as simple as like how do you incorporate strength training into your routine, which a lot of people are scared of even now. But it makes such a big difference. Or how can you change your diet to really level up and have more energy? So little tips and tricks. Day four is putting it all together. So practical tips like how do you run your meetings? How do you give feedback? How do you set up systems within your business or within your life? Because it's for business owners, but also for professionals and just individuals to be your most successful. And then day five is like all about networking, working together, getting together to solve problems. So, I come to you as part of my group, hey, I want to solve these 3 problems in my business in 2025. How am I going to do this? How are we going to do this? And then working together as a group to solve our problems and then hold each other accountable to get it done. So it'll be the 3rd year that I've done it. This will be the biggest one that we've done. I'm super excited about doing it, especially because it's in Hawaii.
I know. What a great time of year to be in Hawaii. Yes, please. All right.
Fun.
So how else can people reach out to you and learn more about your practice and everything else?
So Instagram at WardMD is probably the best way. And I respond to all the messages and look forward to meeting so many of your listeners.
Yay, thank you.